Snow fell silently upon the world as if the heavens had decided to bury the words once spoken too hastily. In a hermitage hidden among frost-covered mountains, a man sealed his soul in a notebook made of skin and memory. It was not a treatise or a formula. It was a prayer written in the blood of experience. His name, now almost forgotten by books, was Elion of Thamar. But to the wise men who knew his ways, he was simply he who listened to the flesh. That manuscript didn't speak of medicines or miracle cures. It spoke of an art older than science, the art of conversing with the body as if it were a sleeping god. Elion had come to understand a dangerous secret, that the human body does not respond to medicine as if to a foreign command, but rather awakens with a word like someone returning home after a long exile. He learned that bones understand the language of the soul, that cells obey the word with a fidelity the mind can never match, and that organs wait silently for someone to call them by their true name. That's why he wrote it and then hid it, because the world wasn't ready, because we still lived under the rule of fear, where pain is punished and unheard, where ailments are enemies, not messages. But now that humanity has begun to suspect that something is missing even though it has everything, this knowledge returns like an ancient voice through the cracks of time. Anyone who reads to the end is not reading a text, they are being called to a ritual. And that ceremony, as silent as a whisper and as powerful as an eclipse, takes place between the soul and the body, between the invisible and the tangible. He wrote it in the year of the dying sun, when the fires still burned for those who dared speak of the unseen. He left it with the hope that someone, one day, would understand. And that someone was you. Chapter 1. I remember Lior, a cloth merchant who arrived from the cold streets of Vienna, his eyes bearing the faded color of those who have already given up. It wasn't his body that weighed him down. It was his story, a story repeated on his lips like a dark incantation. I am cursed. My flesh betrays me. I unravel with each dawn. The doctors called it a disease. I called it an echo of a forgotten verb, because I understood that the body is the soul's most loyal scribe. Every word spoken aloud, every thought cultivated in secret, is a command written in the ink of energy on the invisible walls of the body. The liver doesn't distinguish between a metaphor and a command. The heart doesn't know you're joking when you say, "This is killing me." Cells only know one sacred law: obey. In the monasteries of Zafir, where words were more valuable than gold, I learned that the body is the visible shadow of our invisible bodies. That illness is born in the realm of the soul, seeps into the body of emotions, and only then becomes flesh. But I discovered something even deeper. Words are the bridge between worlds. When Lior said I rot, he wasn't using a literary figure. He was issuing a decree. He was casting a spell over his own temple, and the cells, faithful guardians, obeyed him. So I taught him the art of the healing word, what the ancients called purposeful breath. But it wasn't a technique. It was an act of sacred sovereignty. Every morning before dawn fully awoke, Lior would sit facing east, where the sun had yet to pronounce its name. He would place his left hand on his chest, the seat of emotional memory, and his right hand on his belly, the center of earthly creation. He breathed reverently, not as one who needs air, but as one who calls forth life. And with each inhalation, he took in the divine breath of the universe. With each exhalation, he released the old memories that bound him to darkness. Then he would say, not with fear, but with luminous authority, I am the sanctuary where infinity dwells. My cells know the dance of harmony. My blood is a river that sings of life. Every organ remembers its divine origin. He didn't say it like someone praying automatically, but like someone giving orders to a sacred army. 7 times, 7 breaths, 7 commands to the countless atoms that make up the symphony of a body. In the first week, the silence of death faded. His energy, once as dense as lead, began to glow like liquid gold. He was no longer a dying man. He was a returning traveler. In the second week, her outlook changed. She no longer looked for excuses to suffer, but for reasons to flourish again. And in the fourth, her body began to nourish itself again, as if recognizing that the war was over. By the 8th week, the city's wise men couldn't understand. The evil had disappeared, but it wasn't a miracle. It was a correction. Lear had remembered how to give light instructions to his flesh. Doctors see symptoms, soul alchemists see words transformed into substance. The doctors attack, the wise men awaken. Doctors fear the body, wise men honor it as the temple of the infinite. That's the first truth of invisible art. Your body is the most perfect manifestation of your creative power, and it will obey everything you command. Health, old age, death, rebirth. You are the oracle, you are the word, you are the cause, you are the medicine. But beware. This power is a sacred fire. Once you know that your words create your flesh, you can no longer blame fate, genetics, or external shadows. Your body is your book, your illness is your message, and your healing is your choice. And if you've made it this far, you can no longer pretend you didn't know. Now you know you can talk to your cells like the ancients talked to the sky. And if you listen with your soul, they will answer you. And if you've made it this far, it's clear this topic resonates with you. Remember, the first link in the description has more metaphysical content that can take you even further. Chapter 2. The River That Remembers. They say blood is just a fluid, a red river that carries oxygen and nutrients. So say those who see only with the eyes of the body, but those who have learned to listen with their soul know that blood is much more. It is the liquid calligraphy with which the soul writes its destiny. It was the year the trees stopped singing. A message came to me from the hills of Velmara. The Marquis requested my presence to attend to his wife, Lady Nylera, whose health was failing with the slowness of the autumn leaves. The doctors whispered that her blood was poisoned and assured her she would not survive the next winter. I found her in a room as pale as her face, the light barely dared to enter. Her body was fragile, yes, but that wasn't what stopped me. It was the way she spoke of herself. Every time she mentioned her discomfort, I instinctively brought my hand to my chest, right over my heart. "My blood is killing me," she said. "I feel it turning into a shadow. Every heartbeat carries death deeper." I paid no attention to her physical symptoms. Instead, I observed what others didn't. Her words were knives, and her blood collected them like urgent messages. I understood that she wasn't sick because biology dictated it, but because her word had commanded it. That night, as I prepared essences under the blue light of a patient moon, my consciousness descended like a drop into myself. It was an experience I can't explain precisely. I can only say that my soul was carried away by the river of my own blood. And I saw it. I saw that blood isn't just a vehicle. It's a messenger. It's an archive. It's the silent scribe of the soul. Each blood cell carries not only oxygen, but also the words we speak, the emotions we feel, the thoughts we cultivate. Blood doesn't distinguish between a conscious command and a complaint uttered in passing. It simply obeys. Every time Nylera repeated that her blood was poisoned, her cells received that instruction. When she said it was corrupted, their chemistry aligned with that vibration. Her immune system began attacking her own tissues as if carrying out a military order. And yet, I discovered something even deeper. The blood does not forget. Every word ever spoken, every trauma, every joy is recorded in its liquid memory. It is a sacred river that never stops listening. The next day, I returned to see her with a new understanding. I sat across from her and calmly told her that her blood wasn't diseased. She was obeying. She looked at me in bewilderment, accustomed as she was to diagnoses and prognoses, not revelations. "Every time you say your blood is poisoned," I explained, "you are ordering it to behave as such. Every time you claim it brings death to your organs, you are programming it to do so." Her eyes filled with tears, not out of sadness, but out of recognition. For the first time, she understood that she wasn't the victim of a curse, but the unwitting author of a poorly written story. Then I shared with him a teaching I had received many years before in the deserts of Damaris. There, the sages spoke of the hidden names of each element of the body. According to them, everything in the body has a sacred name that, when spoken with true intention and awareness, awakens its divine nature. The secret name of blood was Elhar Nu, which means liquid light that sings of life. I taught her a ritual she was to practice every morning for 21 days. Nothing complex, but deeply sacred. Sitting in an open position with both palms on her chest, she was to close her eyes and visualize her blood as a golden river flowing through every corner of her body. Breathing deeply, she was to pronounce the words with firmness and confidence. El Harnu, blood of sacred light. Every drop that flows through me is perfect medicine. My cells listen and respond with harmony. My blood does not carry death, but rebirth. I am a living temple of divine consciousness. But it wasn't a prayer in the religious sense. It was a reprogramming, a new instruction sent into his bloodstream. As he did so, he was to imagine how that golden river cleansed his organs, nourished every cell, carried pure oxygen, and ignited the dormant life within him. The changes began quickly. Within 7 days, her face regained color. Within 2 weeks, her energy grew with each dawn. In the 3rd week, tests performed by the court physicians revealed what they couldn't understand. Her blood was completely regenerated. But the most valuable thing wasn't the physical recovery, it was the understanding. Nylira no longer feared her body. She had stopped seeing herself as a victim and had begun to recognize herself as a creator. Years later, from a corner of Italy, she wrote me a letter. In it, she told me that she had taught this method to other noble women who suffered from the same ailments. They were all healed. Not because of the ritual itself, but because they stopped speaking to their blood as an enemy and began to treat it as an ally. Over time, I discovered that the ancient Egyptians called blood the inner Nile, because they believed it was the river that connected the physical body to the spirit. Desert alchemists called it dancing mercury, because they knew it transformed thought into matter. The Hebrew Kabbalists called it the ink of God, because they understood that it was through blood that divinity wrote human experience. Today, modern science has forgotten all this. It has reduced blood to a laboratory datum. But the power of ancient truths still lives within it. Every time you say, "My blood is good," your blood vibrates with well-being. Every time you affirm, "My blood is perfect," your cells align with that perfection. Every time you decree, "My blood carries life," that life becomes a reality. But it also works the other way around. Every time you complain, you weaken her. Every time you blame her for your pain, you fill her with shadows. Every time you think of her as an enemy, she starts behaving like one. Blood is the most direct channel between your soul and your body. It doesn't just carry oxygen and nutrients. It carries your decrees, your conscience, your history. The quality of your blood is a mirror of the quality of your thoughts. I've seen men die with impeccable blood because they decreed their death with conviction, and I've seen children heal because their mothers learned to speak to their blood with love. Blood doesn't lie, it doesn't deceive, it doesn't argue, it just obeys. If you want to know the true state of your consciousness, observe your blood. And if you want to change your destiny, first change the words you speak to that inner river. Because in the end, your blood is liquid ink, and you, and only you, decide what story you'll write on your body. Chapter 3. The Art of Feeling Until You Heal. Unexpressed emotions are alchemy in reverse. They transform, not lead into gold, but light into poison. There is no toxin more destructive than an emotion the soul has been unable to release. During my years wandering between the realms of body and spirit, I have seen strong men die, not by the sword or by the poisons of dark forests, but by what they kept inside, nameless, formless, with no way out. And I have also witnessed the miraculous. Broken beings who learned to look within themselves with honesty and tenderness, and in doing so, awakened the oldest medicine in the universe, heartfelt truth. I remember one particularly cruel winter, the year the waters of the Alquer River froze until their murmur was silenced. It was then that a lady came to me, wrapped in black silk, and a silence even thicker than her clothes. Her name was Lysandra de Verneux, a Castilian noblewoman whose beauty had once inspired verse and song. But that day, as she entered my office in Aina-le-Dor, she seemed a shadow of her former self. His face displayed sores that appeared and disappeared like the ghosts of an ancient guilt. His yellowish skin spoke of a body poisoned by something more than physical illness. No doctor had even been able to name his ailment. They had tried bloodletting, concoctions brought from distant lands, even exorcism rituals, but all to no avail. When he sat across from me, his gaze avoided mine. I understood that I should ask not about his symptoms, but about the invisible cracks in his soul. I asked him respectfully to tell me not about his wounds, but about his story. At first he resisted, like those who fear disturbing the mud they've learned to tread without sinking. But when I revealed to him what very few know, that every repressed emotion transforms into a concrete substance, a poison that the body is forced to manufacture, then his defenses began to give way, and he confessed. For more than 15 years she had harbored an implacable hatred toward her younger sister. The betrayal had been silent, but profound. The night before her wedding, her fiancé was seduced by her own blood. Lysandra hadn't said a word. She had continued with her life as if nothing had happened, hiding the fire of her anger beneath the mask of impeccable nobility. But the body does not forget what the soul keeps silent. I explained what I learned among the forbidden manuscripts of the Karnu monastery in the Sinai desert, that emotions are living substances. When we deny them, the body doesn't discard them, it stores them. Suppressed anger turns into ulcers, inflammation, and liver disease. Silenced sadness into lung congestion, fatigue, and apathy. Unexpressed fear transforms into anxiety, insomnia, and palpitations. And guilt that goes unreleased eats away at the digestive system, the body's defenses, and even mental clarity. Lysandra asked me if there was still time to undo that poison that was killing her drop by drop. Not only is there time, I replied, but your body, which has been the faithful executor of your unconscious decrees, will obey your new orders with the same loyalty, if they are born from truth. Then I taught him a path I called the transmutation of emotional poison. First, I had to precisely name each emotion. It wasn't enough to say, I'm sad or I feel angry. I had to speak with the precision of someone who invokes it, because only what is clearly named can be released. I had to say, for example, I feel hatred toward my sister for what she did. I feel ashamed for having pretended everything was fine. I feel guilty for having wished her to suffer like I did. Second, she had to give her body permission to stop storing those old chemicals. Placing her hands on her chest and belly, she had to say, my body, which has served me faithfully, I give you the command to release the poison you stored to protect me. I no longer need it. I now choose peace. I authorize you to create only the compounds of compassion, forgiveness, and renewal. Third, she had to allow herself to feel, not in her mind, but in her body. She had to shout out her rage, cry her sadness until she was empty, tremble if fear came her way. The body, when it is listened to, lightens. Fourth, once the emotional poison was removed, I had to order the creation of new internal chemistry. I taught her to say, my body, now create the substance of understanding toward my sister, for she too acted from her wound. Create the compounds of forgiveness toward me because I did what I could. Create the elixirs of renewed trust because I deserve to love again without fear. And finally, each dawn before opening her eyes to the outside world, she had to feed her new programming with words of power. Every cell in my body vibrates with peace. My skin regenerates with love. My blood flows with the joy of one who has forgiven. My heart beats to the frequency of love that keeps no account. Lysandra followed this path for 40 days. On the 10th, the sores began to heal. On the 20th, her skin regained its color. By the end of the 4th week, not only had her body changed, but so had her energy. Her eyes, once sunken, now shone as if a candle had been lit within them. And the most beautiful thing, she handed me a letter. It was for her sister. There were no reproaches, only gratitude and forgiveness. Days later, she received a reply. Her sister had also suffered in silence, and she wept with relief at knowing she was forgiven. Years later, Lysandra married a French gentleman. She had 3 children. She lived to a venerable age and never became seriously ill again. I had understood the secret that only the brave can learn, that we are alchemists, that we can turn poison into medicine, that pain, when looked at with love, is transformed into wisdom. The truth I'm sharing with you is this: your body doesn't distinguish between a heartfelt emotion and a feigned one. It only knows how to obey. If you pretend there's no anger, it will store anger. If you hide your sadness, it will generate melancholy. But if you express, if you release, if you transmute, then your body will understand that it can change the formula. You don't need more time to heal. You just need determination, presence, and compassion for yourself. The unconscious needs to be brought to light. The unnamed needs to be acknowledged, and the suppressed needs to be finally released. Your body, always ready, always loyal, is waiting for your new instructions. The old orders are no longer necessary. Today, you can choose. Because the most lethal poison doesn't come from snakes or dark plants. It comes from the fear of feeling. And the most powerful medicine isn't found in bottles or potions, but in your ability to feel until you heal. Every emotion released is a homecoming. Every tear shed is a door opened. Every pent-up cry finally released is an echo the soul recognizes as its own. Your body wants to serve you. It just needs to know who to obey: the fear it hides or the freedom it reveals. Chapter 4. The Secret Temple of the Body. The human body is not just flesh, bone, or blood. It is a living cathedral, a temple where the geometry of the universe is embodied with a perfection we rarely see. Every cell, every organ, every heartbeat is a material expression of a sacred formula inscribed in the invisible. I learned this mystery in the year when the shadows lengthened more than usual in the Aram-Nur mountains. I had traveled to the ancient monastery of Sangal, a fortress hidden among the crags, where the forbidden manuscripts of the ancient desert healers were still kept. It was there that I found a truth that would forever alter my understanding of the human body. I discovered that every part of the body follows a perfect geometric pattern, a vibrational design that directly reflects the laws of the cosmos. The heart beats in a spiral, like galaxies. The lungs expand following the geometry of the sacred octagon. The liver pulses in hexagons like honeycombs. The kidneys filter in sinusoidal undulations like the valleys of sound. And when these subtle patterns are altered by trauma, distorted thoughts, or dense emotions, the physical body begins to reflect that distortion. What we call illness is nothing more than geometry that has lost its shape. It was Brother Elian, a monk who had spent more than 3 decades in the deserts of northern Egypt, who taught me to see. His physical eyes were blind, but his inner vision was luminous. According to him, what many call aura is nothing other than the living expression of sacred geometry. He told me, "You don't heal a person with plants, words, or diagnoses. You heal them by reminding them of the perfect form they've forgotten." The first case I treated with this new perspective was that of a young merchant named Alaric. He suffered from a progressive paralysis that began in his feet and threatened to spread to his heart. Doctors had already told him there was no hope. But when I observed him, I perceived the true origin of his illness. His energetic column was fragmented. The spirals of light that should flow from his center were broken, twisted, as if an invisible storm had passed through his being. I asked him when his illness began. He quietly confessed that it was a week after being disinherited by his father. He refused to continue the family business because he longed for a different life, and as punishment, he was emotionally and financially exiled. I understood then that the trauma hadn't just hurt his heart. It had disrupted the geometry of his life system. I explained to him the most ancient law of hermetic healing. The physical body is merely a reflection of an invisible architecture. When this architecture becomes distorted, the body, its faithful servant, simply follows the new instructions, even if these lead to illness. So I taught him the art of geometric restoration. Every dawn, he was to sit in complete silence and visualize his spine as a ladder of golden light ascending from earth to heaven. From each vertebra, he was to imagine a perfect spiral of blue light emanating, enveloping his body in order and symmetry. Then, with his own hands, he would trace patterns on his body, perfect circles around his heart, restoring the golden spiral of life. Triangles on his forehead, activating the geometric clarity of the higher mind. Pentagons on his belly, balancing his inner power center. As he did so, he spoke these words with sacred authority. I now restore the perfect geometry of my sacred temple. Every cell vibrates according to divine patterns. My spine is Jacob's ladder. My organs are the jewels of the cosmos. My blood flows under the laws of universal harmony. On the 7th day, he felt a slight tingling in his feet. On the 14th, he wiggled his toes. On the 21st, he rose from the chair to which he had been confined for 6 long months. And on the 40th day, he walked through the streets of his city as if he had awakened from a long sleep. But the most wonderful thing wasn't his physical recovery, but the gift it awakened within him. He could see the sacred geometry in others. He saw how anger distorted the hexagons of the liver, how fear altered the octagons of the lungs, how guilt tore apart the fractals of the heart. He became my disciple, and in time, an even wiser teacher than I. Together we helped restore sacred architecture for hundreds of people, and we learned something even deeper. Illness is not an enemy. It is a loving warning that the inner temple needs to be redesigned. Every organ vibrates with a shape, every thought draws a pattern, every emotion is a wave that can distort or heal. And you, who inhabit this body, are not its victim, but its architect. When you consciously trace sacred symbols on your body, you're not performing an empty ritual. You're giving precise instructions to the universe to reconstruct your perfect form. When you visualize the golden spirals, the shimmering fractals, the living forms within you, your body listens and obeys. Health is not just the absence of symptoms, it's the harmonious manifestation of divine geometry. And you, with your intention, your vision, and your voice, can remind your body who it truly is. A living temple, a sacred work of art, the secret map of the universe. Illness is distorted geometry, health is restored geometry, and you are the alchemist holding the compass. Chapter 5. The Heart as an Altar. The heart is not a simple pump that propels blood. It is the sacred altar where the soul silently celebrates the mass of life. In its heartbeat resonates the most ancient prayer, one that is not uttered with words but with presence. I understood it during a winter of silence and shadows. It was the year in which the persecution intensified in the southern kingdoms, and I had taken refuge in the mountains of Carinthia, where the breath of the forest was the only protection. It was there, amid the snow and the whispering of the fir trees, that I received a message sealed with red wax. Its sender was a man who knew all too well the lights and shadows of the soul. Lorenzo de' Medici, a nobleman of the papal court, was dying in Florence. During the day, his heart beat without difficulty, but every night at the exact hour the monks sang Compline, his chest shook with violent thumps that woke the entire house. The most learned doctors had failed. The cardinals had prayed, the relics had been exposed. Nothing calmed his wandering heart. I arrived disguised as a pilgrim, hidden behind a coarse wool cloak. A moment at his bedside was enough to perceive what others could not. His heart was sick, not as an organ, but as an altar. It had been desecrated by years of contradictions. It vibrated to the rhythm of two opposing worlds. By day, Lorenzo was a benefactor of the sacred arts. A patron of the most inspired sculptors and painters, he was a protector of churches and hospitals. But when night fell, he became the city's most ruthless usurer, enriching himself at the expense of other people's ruins. He lived in secret, torn between light and greed. He confessed to me through bitter tears that he had been acting against his conscience for 2 decades. Every time a family lost their home due to an impossible debt, he felt a pang in his chest. His heart, that altar that should have been consecrated to unconditional love, had become a marketplace of opposing interests, and that inner fracture was now his torment. I then told him about the mystery I had learned in the Coptic manuscripts of St. Catherine's Monastery. The human heart is not just a muscle, but the most powerful electromagnetic center in the body. Its energy field exceeds that of the brain by thousands of times. Every emotion, every thought, every decision passes first through the heart before manifesting in physical reality. When one lives in coherence with one's deepest truth, the heart emits harmonious waves that heal not only the body, but also the environment. But when one betrays oneself, the heart begins to emit interference. Inner disharmony turns into sickness, disconnection, confusion, because the heart doesn't lie. It doesn't reason. It only vibrates with truth or breaks in its absence. I offered Lorenzo a path to healing that didn't involve ointments or external prayers, but rather an inner return to the altar of his soul. I taught him the technique I had called the restoration of the sacred altar. It wasn't simple, but it was real. The first step was vibrational confession. He had to pronounce out loud, one by one, all the times he had acted against his heart's dictates. It wasn't enough to feel regret. He had to name his contradictions with complete honesty. With each word, an electromagnetic charge trapped in his cells was released. With each truth spoken, his altar began to be purified. The second step was conscious consecration. He placed both hands on his chest and repeated solemnly, "My heart, sacred altar of my soul, I consecrate you anew as a temple of divine love. May every heartbeat be a prayer, every pulse a blessing, and every rhythm a hymn of gratitude. I command you to vibrate only with the frequency of unconditional love." The third step was to establish a heart coherence ritual. Every morning before dawn, he sat silently, hands over his heart, and synchronized his breathing with its beats. He inhaled for 5 beats, held for 5, and exhaled for another 5. Over time, this practice united his heart, mind, and nervous system into a single harmonious field. But there was a fourth step, the most difficult. He had to make an irrevocable decision. Either he lived completely in coherence with his heart, or he surrendered to incoherence and accepted the consequences. He could no longer remain a divided altar. No body can endure living out of alignment with its truth for long. Lorenzo chose bravely. That same night, he forgave the debts of the families he had ruined. He transformed his pawn shop into a hospital for the poor. He donated his remaining fortune to nameless, unheralded charities, and something wonderful happened. His heart, until then shaken by an invisible war, found a new rhythm, a harmonious, constant, full pulse. He lived for 3 more decades, but his true legacy wasn't his longevity, but the energetic field he began to radiate. People who visited him with sincere hearts began to heal. They didn't know why, but being near him they felt relieved, at peace, in the presence of something sacred. His heart, restored as an altar, had become a beacon. And now you must remember this truth because it is for you. Your heart is the altar where your soul celebrates its invisible liturgy. Every heartbeat is a prayer sent to the universe. Every pulse is a decree that shapes your reality. When your heart beats in coherence with your purest values, you are a channel of healing. You radiate clarity, purpose, and beauty. But when your heart beats in contradiction, when you decide with your mind what you know your soul doesn't approve of, you generate internal chaos. And that chaos always finds a way to manifest itself physically. You can't fool the heart with rational justifications. He already knows. He knows if you're fulfilling your sacred purpose. He knows when you truly love and when you're pretending. He knows when you're living to please others and when you're walking your own path. And your heart is the point where heaven and earth meet within you. Keep it clean, coherent, and consecrated, and it will be your greatest medicine. Defile it with inconsistencies, and it will become your prison. The choice, as always, remains solely yours. Chapter 6. The Sigh that Unites Heaven and Earth. Every time we inhale, a piece of heaven descends to rest on our chest, like a bird of light. And every time we exhale, humanity rises, humbly seeking to reconnect with the mystery from which it originates. Breathing is not just living, it's remembering, it's returning to the invisible home within us. It was during my forced retreat in the mountains of Lugora, amidst icy winds and ancient oaks, that I discovered the true nature of breathing. There, in a village where time seemed to stand still, I met the person who would teach me that the soul also needs to learn to inhabit the body. Her name was Alina, daughter of the valley's blacksmith. A young woman with a still gaze and a frail body, she hadn't spoken a word or walked for more than 3 solar cycles. Her story was whispered among the village chimneys. A pack of wolves had crossed the forest one moonlit night and attacked her as she went to fetch water from the river. Although she survived her injuries, something inside her had been invisibly torn apart. Since then, she could not stand or make a sound. The monks who lived in a nearby monastery claimed she was possessed, They said her body shuddered as if a shadow were inhabiting her, especially when she tried to breathe deeply. But when I saw her, I didn't perceive darkness. I sensed absence. Her soul wasn't lost. It was just disconnected. I understood then that his suffering was not the work of demons, but the consequence of a much more subtle fact. He had forgotten how to breathe as a whole being. I recalled the teachings I received years before in the silent crypts of the desert initiates. There I learned that breath is not simply air, it is the caress of the spirit. It is the golden thread that weaves the union between the visible and the invisible. Each inhalation brings with it prana, ruach, chi, that divine breath that awakens dormant cells. Each exhalation is a surrender, a relinquishment of what is no longer necessary. I approached Alina's father and asked his permission to attempt what no doctor had ever attempted, to teach his daughter to breathe with her soul again. We took her to a place surrounded by ancient oak trees. There, in silence, I placed my hands on her chest and spoke, not to her ears, but to her essence. "Alina," I whispered, "your spirit remembers the way back. With every breath we take together, I will help you cross the bridge that connects your light to your body. There is no rush, no fear, only the eternal rhythm where heaven meets earth. Within you." I breathed then, with intention, slowly, deeply, and rhythmically. I placed her small hands over my heart so that I could feel the inner dance of a being at peace. I inhaled for 8 beats, held for 4, and exhaled for another 8. A cycle that was revealed to me in a dream, and which I later discovered was the same one the ancient sages used to incarnate the soul in the body. For long minutes, my breathing guided hers, and although she didn't react visibly, something subtle began to change, as if a forgotten melody were beginning to play inside her. After an hour, his chest began to move in sync with mine. There were no more spasms. There was rhythm. There was peace. Over the next few weeks, I taught him the 4 sacred breaths. They weren't techniques, but bridges. Each one activated a different level of being. The first was the grounding breath. As she inhaled, she was to imagine the air descending to the base of her spine, transforming into golden roots that anchored her to the earth. This restored her place, her right to exist here. The second was the breath of elevation. As she inhaled, she would draw the air up to the crown of her head, as if a thread of light connected her to the stars. This was a reminder of her celestial origins. The third was expansion breathing. I asked her to fill her chest, as if embracing the universe. This taught her to feel that there was no separation between her and her surroundings. And the fourth was the integration breath. He inhaled and exhaled, moving his mind over his belly, his heart, and his forehead, uniting thought, emotion, and action, rebuilding the temple from within. Alina repeated these breaths for 40 days, the sacred number that, according to the ancients, symbolizes the soul's transition to a new dimension of being. And so it was. On the 10th day, with the voice of someone returning from a long journey, he said his first word, "Thank you." On the 20th, she got up from her chair and walked slowly toward a window, as if the sun were calling her name. On the 30th day, she sang, an old song her mother had taught her as a child. And by the 40th day, Alina hadn't just regained her speech and movement. She'd acquired a gift. She could sense a person's state of mind by listening to their breathing. She could tell when someone was lying just by hearing them exhale. She could tell where someone hurt just by observing the rhythm of their breathing. His breath became medicine, his presence was comfort, and that is the truth that I want to leave you written here, under this moon that also breathes with us. Your breath is the purest link between what you are and what you can become. Every inhalation is an act of love for your existence. Every exhalation is an opportunity to let go of what's holding you back. To breathe shallowly is to live disconnected. It's to walk through the world like a homeless guest. To breathe consciously is to allow your soul to settle in every cell and transform your body into a living altar. Emotions don't die in the mind, they die in the breath. Fear cuts off the air in your belly. Sadness squeezes it in your chest. Confusion cuts it off in your mind. So if you want to heal, start by breathing differently. Breathe like someone who knows they are inhabited by the divine. Breathe like someone who remembers they are worthy of the light. And your soul, silent but faithful, will return home. In this moment, as your eyes follow these words, you can do something sacred. Choose how to breathe. It may be just another routine breath, or it may be the first breath of your rebirth. Every breath is a vote, a choice, and a destiny. Breathe like someone who loves being alive, and you'll see how life begins to love you back. Chapter 7, The Breath of the Word. In the beginning, there was no form, no light, only a sacred vibration floating in the immensity of silence. That vibration was a word. Not just any word, but the first, the one that gave birth to all that exists. It was the Word. And since then, everything that breathes responds with natural obedience to words spoken with intention. Many centuries later, during a mild autumn in the Altamar Mountains, a man arrived at my refuge who would forever change my understanding of the power we carry in our throats. His name was Noam. He was a merchant in the city of Bravena and had completely lost his sight after an explosion in his gunpowder workshop. His wife accompanied him, guiding him with a mixture of sweetness and courage, traversing paths so complex that even the deer in the forest avoided them. When Noam arrived, his eyes were ashen, dull, lifeless. But that wasn't what caught my attention. What stopped me was the intensity with which his soul shone. I sensed in him a door closed by trauma. Yes, but also a door open to a new way of seeing. His body had lost its sight, but his spirit had gained another clarity. And it was then that I understood. The blindness didn't come from his eyes, but from the story he had begun to repeat to himself since the accident. I then told him about the most closely guarded secret of the sages of the ancient world. The spoken word is not simply a sound that escapes the lips. It is a decree, an act of creation. Just as the universe was shaped by a single word, human beings possess that same power in their throats. Noam listened in silence, as if each sentence I uttered drew a new horizon for him. I told him that every word we utter is an order that the body, the soul, and the universe are designed to obey. During my studies in the temples of Alexandria, I had learned that there are 3 levels of speech. The first is the dormant word, which most people use without realizing it. It is a soulless word, thrown into the air out of habit, without direction, without purpose. These words do not transform. The second is the awakened word, spoken by those who begin to sense its power. It has the potential to stir emotions, change thoughts, and open paths, but it still lacks the power to alter matter. And then there is the ignited word. It is spoken by someone who has fused their heart, soul, and voice into one. That word has enough power to heal, rebuild, and reconfigure the body itself. I suggested to Noam that he practice a technique I had perfected over the years, which I called the luminous decree. I explained that he should begin by placing his hands over his closed eyes, breathing deeply until he felt his throat, heart, and soul vibrate in harmony. This harmony was essential. When the 3 centers are aligned, the spoken word is born from unity and therefore has divine authority. Then he was to pronounce his decree with the certainty of someone who isn't asking, but rather acknowledging a truth that already exists. The words I chose for him were the following. I am the light that is reborn in my eyes. I command my nerves to see. I decree that my sight be restored to perfection. This is my truth, and my body obeys it. This decree was to be repeated 3 times each morning, just at dawn, when the creative energy is most active and available, and he was to do so as if it were the first time those words had been spoken in the universe, with the innocence of a newborn god. For the rest of the day, Noam had to watch every word that came out of his mouth. No more phrases like, I can't see, or I'm blind. Instead, he had to repeat, my sight grows stronger every day. I perceive the light. My eyes remember how to see. With a discipline bordering on the sacred, Noam followed this method without hesitation. And that was when the impossible began to happen. On the 7th day, he began to perceive points of light in the darkness. On the 14th day, he could distinguish shapes. On the 21st day, he fully recovered the sight in his right eye. And by the 24th day, both eyes were functioning normally. But the most surprising thing wasn't his physical recovery. It was that his new eyes saw things he couldn't before. He read emotions in faces, perceived energy fields around people, and could notice imbalances just by observing them. His vision was no longer human, it was soul vision. When I asked him what he thought about what had happened, Noam looked at me with a serenity that seemed born from another world. He said, "Master, it wasn't my eyes that healed, but my word that awakened." For years I spoke phrases that reinforced my blindness. I was giving orders that the universe obeyed with precision. But when I learned to speak from the authority of my spirit, the body had no choice but to obey a new truth. This is what you need to understand. Every word you speak is a decree that transforms or weakens your reality. When you say, "I am sick," you are programming your body to manifest the illness. When you say, "I can't," your cells contract and lower their guard. But when you affirm, "I am healing," your body activates its regenerative mechanisms. When you declare, "I am strong," your nervous system ignites with the energy of a god remembering its origin. Most people live as slaves to their own unconscious words. They speak of their limitations as if they were their identity. They describe their fears as if they were inevitable prophecies. And the body, obedient like a loyal servant, turns those words into physical realities. The word is your magic wand, your fiery sword, your royal scepter. But like any divine tool, its power depends on the awareness with which you wield it. You can create life or destruction. You can heal or sicken. You can open paths or bind yourself. And every time you speak, you are choosing between building a temple or digging a prison. And right now, as you read these lines, you have the possibility to change your entire destiny simply by changing the way you use your voice. Your next word can be the seed of a new life or the echo of a story that no longer serves you. The choice, as always, is yours. But never forget, the word is your sacred inheritance. It is the echo of the Creator in your throat. It's not a question of whether you possess that power, but whether you have the courage to wield it with the responsibility of a true architect of realities. Speak like a god and your body will be a temple. Speak like a slave and you will live locked within the bars of your own decrees. The word is yours and with it your destiny. Chapter 8, The Fast of the Soul. True hunger is not born in the stomach. It arises deep within the spirit, in that silent corner where the soul cries out for nourishment that cannot be found on the world's plates. 3 moons have passed since I laid these pages to rest, and as I write again, I feel the ink bear the weight of a mystery I can no longer keep silent. Tonight, as the November wind gently blows against the glass of my laboratory, I know the time has come to reveal one of the most powerful secrets I discovered on my pilgrimage through the hidden temples of Egypt. It was the year 1538 when I met an extraordinary woman, Sister Agatha, a Benedictine nun at the convent of St. John. She had fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. She did so not as a religious penance nor as a mortification of the body, but following an ancient practice she had found in a forgotten Coptic manuscript in the convent archives. The doctors feared for her life and called me in to examine her. What I found defied everything the medicine of my time considered possible. Her body had barely lost 3 pounds in all that time, yet her face radiated a light I had never seen in another human being. Her eyes were like crystals full of life. Her skin seemed that of a young maiden of 18, although Agatha was already 45. She spoke with a soft and firm voice, as if each word was sustained by an unshakable certainty. "Master Paracelsus," she told me upon receiving my visit, "I have discovered that the body can be nourished by substances that do not belong to this material world." Her words, as serene as they were disconcerting, found echoes in ancient Hermetic texts that I myself had studied in the temples of Memphis. Agatha wasn't depriving herself of food. She had learned to nourish herself directly from the primordial source, that subtle energy that sustains the universe. As we walked at dawn through the convent garden, She explained to me with sweetness and clarity. Every time we eat, we absorb not only nutrients, but also the emotions, memories, and energies of the food. A slaughtered cow transmits its fear. Wheat can carry the sadness of the farmers who grew it. Therefore, rather than fasting from physical food, she had begun a process of deep purification. Fasting of the soul, she told me, is the creation of a sacred inner space, where only that which vibrates in perfect harmony with our divine essence can enter. It wasn't about punishing the body, but about liberating it. She showed me her practice. Instead of focusing on the lack of food, she directed her attention to the solar plexus, visualizing it as a golden sun radiating light into her entire being. Every time her body asked for food, she responded from that center with words that opened invisible portals. She taught me the exact Latin phrases she used to preserve its original vibration. Spiritus meus corpus meo nutrit, lux aeterna cellulis meis fluit, which means, my spirit nourishes my body, eternal light flows into my cells. But the essential thing wasn't the words, but the level of consciousness from which they were spoken. You're not asking for nourishment, he warned me. You're reminding your body where its true strength comes from. You're declaring a cosmic truth that activates dormant memories in your cells. I then decided to experience the practice for myself. In the first few days, the physical hunger was palpable, but soon something began to change. An unknown mental clarity enveloped me, as if a veil that had clouded my senses for years had been lifted. Far from weakening, I felt a new, clean, vibrant, vital energy. My senses sharpened, and my ability as a healer rose to levels I never imagined possible. I could see the energetic disturbances in my patients' astral bodies with supernatural clarity. Healing techniques that had previously taken days to bear fruit now acted with immediate effectiveness. In our last conversations, Agatha confided something even more astonishing to me. The body has forgotten that it was created to be immortal. Every time we feed it from the physical, we remind it of its fragility. But when we nourish it from the primordial source, we restore the memory of its eternity. That phrase stayed with me for the rest of my life. Over time, I perfected the system until it became a complete process of cellular regeneration. I found that soul fasting, if done with true understanding, can reverse aging, heal diseases deemed incurable, and awaken latent spiritual abilities. The technique consists of 3 fundamental phases. The first is preparation. Over 7 days, the consumption of physical food is gradually reduced, while the practice of contemplation and spiritual connection is intensified. The second is the fast itself, which for beginners can last at least 3 days, although it can be extended over time. And the third is reintegration, in which physical food is reintroduced with a completely renewed awareness. But this practice is not a game. It should not be undertaken out of curiosity or fashion. It is a sacred act that demands responsibility, respect, and a deep understanding of the hermetic principles that underpin it. Now, as I write by the flickering light of candles, I feel the weight of sharing this secret with you. If you've come this far, if these words resonate in the depths of your being, it's because your soul is ready. Soul fasting is not just another technique. It's not an esoteric curiosity. It's a door. It's the threshold that separates the sleeping self from the eternal self. It's the reminder that you are not here to survive, but to remember your divine origin. When your body becomes a truly sacred temple, the light of the Almighty can dwell within it. And when you learn to nourish yourself with that light, you discover a truth that transforms everything. Hunger is not of the body, but of the soul, and it can only be satisfied at the source from which we come. That source is within you, waiting for you to remember. Chapter 9. The silence of closed eyelids. The invisible bells of the soul often ring when the world sleeps. It was during one of those nameless dawns, when the sky is neither night nor day, that I awoke with the need to write. As if a presence whispered in my ear, I was urged to tell a secret that didn't belong to me, but that had been entrusted to me to be given to whoever was ready. The secret wasn't new. It was as old as the memory of the first dawn. And yet, it was unknown to most. It is about daily resurrection, the sacred art of being reborn every day, not from the flesh, but from the subtle breath hidden behind every blink of the soul. I met wise Edric in a snowstorm so thick the world seemed to hang between two heartbeats. He knocked on the door of my home in the city of Kalar, bringing with him a gaze that had seen more springs than I could count. They said he had survived 100 winters, but his face bore no more than 30 autumns. His skin had the texture of clouds before the rain, and his eyes shone with the tenderness possessed only by those who have wept a lot and yet learned to smile. "I'm not here to talk to you about death," he told me, "but about what we can do with it." During the nights when the snow sealed us off from the outside world, Edric shared his legacy with me. He told me of a temple buried in the sands of the Antavi Desert, where ancient guardians of time taught us to die without departing, to leave our bodies without abandoning them. Sleep, he explained to me as we warmed our hands by a lit candle, is not rest. It's the threshold. According to their teachings, when you close your eyes each night, your body becomes the altar and your soul becomes the celebrant. But most people drift off into sleep without realizing it, as if falling into a dark well, unaware that it is precisely there that what was lost can be rebuilt. Before going to sleep, he taught me to lie down with the gentleness of someone entering a sacred boat. Body straight, arms at his sides, like someone peacefully surrendering to what was to come. Then he spoke words in a language the heart understood before the mind. They weren't spells, they were reminders. He recited invocations that spoke of becoming, of peace, of unity with the eternal. As he said them, he imagined every part of his body dissolving into a warm golden light, as if matter were remembering that, in its essence, it too is celestial fire. See how your feet transform into rays of sunshine, your legs into a river of light, your heart into a golden tree whose leaves glow in the darkness. Upon reaching the final breath of the visualization, the body became weightless. Consciousness floated and reached planes where illness doesn't exist, where old age is merely a story someone mistakenly told me. There, he told me, the soul contemplates the body's original design, that perfect mold the universe created before doubts, fears, and mistakes began to shape it. Then, the second act began, the reconstruction. With words filled with firmness, he gave the order to be reborn. My body rises according to the eternal design. Every wound dissolves, all pain returns to nothingness, all impurity is returned to dust. These weren't requests, they were decrees from a soul remembering its sovereignty. The first results were gentle, like a breeze that heralds change. Sleep became deep and restorative. My mind, previously clouded by shattered thoughts, began to see with unusual clarity. Old ailments dissolved like ice in the sun. But the most striking thing was that night when, as I repeated the ritual, I felt like I was floating above my body. I observed my physical form with the eyes of the soul, and understood that the body is nothing more than light that has forgotten that it is. The next day, standing in front of the obsidian mirror in my room, I noticed that the wrinkles around my eyes had vanished. My hair, which had begun to pale, regained its ebony hue. My skin, once again, pulsed with the freshness of lost youth. "It's not a miracle," Edric assured me. "It's your memory awakening." He added that the ancient sages did not escape death, but rather embraced it every night. They knew that dying is not the end, but the passage, and that whoever crosses that threshold with awareness is reborn every dawn with a new body and a renewed heart. Over time, I've made this practice a ritual as natural as breathing. Every night, before closing my eyes, I cross the threshold with gratitude and faith, and every morning, I find myself lighter, more whole, more alive. My senses have sharpened, my body has returned to its best, but what has truly transformed is my consciousness. Today I understand that life is not a line that advances toward old age, but a circle that can be renewed infinitely. Every night is an opportunity to die to pain, to resentment, to fatigue, to the old version of oneself. And every dawn is a portal that allows us to be born as the being we choose to be. Now, as the first rays of sunlight filter through the window and paint my desk with shades of hope, I give you this secret, not because it belongs to me, but because it's yours too. When you close your eyes tonight, remember, you are crossing the threshold, and on the other side, your resurrection awaits you. You don't need to die just once for all. You can do it every night, and in that silent surrender you will find the way back to your eternity. Chapter 10. The Meeting of the Two Suns. In the incense and resin-scented gloom, where the flames of fire do not warm the air but the mysteries that float within it, I finally understood one of the most veiled truths kept in the human heart. There is no complete healing nor clear purpose until the encounter between that which dwells in the heights and that which walks with us on earth is consummated. I'm not talking about a love of flesh or the company of another soul. I'm talking about a sacred union that waits silently in the depths of one's being. The embrace between the spirit that yearns to soar and the body that learns to sustain it. I still remember Elena de Lorenza. Her arrival at my home was like the apparition of a shadow torn from within. She had traveled for days from the northern valleys, seeking answers that the kingdom's wise men had already declared non-existent. Her body was withering like a flower deprived of light. Her voice, muffled by the exhaustion of internal wars, found no rest, neither in sleep nor in wakefulness. Scientists with their vials, needles, and diagnostics gave her condition a name: vital exhaustion. But looking at her, I knew it wasn't her blood or her organs that were dying, but her pact with existence. I watched her for entire moons. In the mornings, the heat of the fire drove her to feverish states where visions wove together with prayers. In the afternoons, the waters of grief plunged her into a melancholy so profound that she seemed to drown in her own tears. Then I knew what I had to do: reveal to him the ancient rite of the meeting of the two suns, the mystical union between what comes from the stars and what is born from the earth. It wasn't a medical procedure, it was an inner ceremony. Elena, I told her one morning, your soul wants to rise like the wind, but your roots are crying out to stay. The discord isn't in your body, but in the fracture between your light and your shadow. I taught him how to transform his breathing into a bridge. I asked him to place his right hand on his chest and his left on his belly. There, I told him, dwell the two suns. One descends from the firmament and the other ascends from the mud. Let them meet. At first, her mind resisted. She had been raised to live in a world where soul and body were enemies, not lovers. But something inside her, perhaps an ancient memory, awakened, and then the miracle happened. I saw her shine. A soft light like newborn gold sprang from her chest. It wasn't a light seen with the eyes, but with the soul. That light spread throughout her being like a song awakening dormant flowers. Day after day, her body began to remember. She remembered that it was a temple, not a prison. She remembered that it was molded not just from flesh, but from a star. And as Elena learned not to resist herself, her body healed. Her voice regained its timbre. Her skin began to smile again. Her gaze no longer sought the ground, but the horizon. But the deepest transformation was invisible. She no longer feared her humanity, and she no longer feared her divinity. One afternoon he said to me while picking flowers with new hands, "Master, I have understood that immortality is not avoiding death, but living each moment as if the soul and the body were dancing in perfect harmony." And I understood that I had reached the peak of the ritual. To you who read this with an open heart, I want to share this same secret, because it's not about theories or unattainable rituals. It's about remembering that you too were created for this sacred union. Every morning before the day takes hold of you, pause for a few moments. Place one hand on your heart, the other on your belly, and say, "Today I join in sacred ceremony. Today the heaven within me embraces the earth. I am altar and fire. I am root and star, and every cell of me bears witness to this divine wedding." Visualize a golden light descending from above, like a solar blessing, and a silver light rising from the earth, like an ancestral whisper. Allow both to meet in your chest, and there, in that sacred spot, recognize that you are not divided. You never were. You had only forgotten. True alchemy doesn't happen in crucibles or laboratories. It happens in the inner temple. It doesn't turn metals into gold, but rather separation into unity, shadow into clarity. And when you achieve this fusion, even for an instant, you will understand that you are not a body with a soul, nor a soul trapped in a body. You are the meeting point between the eternal and the transient. You are the place where infinity decides to take form. And in that instant of clarity, all your wounds will heal, not because they will disappear, but because they will no longer hurt. Because you'll have remembered that what you are doesn't need to be fixed, just celebrated. Chapter 11. The Guardian of the Silent Light. Twilight gently filters through the cracks of my refuge, that sanctuary where time has learned to walk barefoot and where secrets are not spoken, but breathe with each exhalation of the soul. I feel my journey in this way approaching its end, not as a sad farewell, but as one who stops reading aloud to listen to the murmur of eternity. It is not death that awaits me, but a metamorphosis. For he who has spoken the word with reverence and lived it with truth does not disappear. He dissolves into the immensity of that which never had a beginning. Through the veil of memory, I evoke the face of Elian, my last apprentice. He was a young boy whose eyes carried the moisture of the storm and the urgency of a wounded soul. One night, when the heavens were rent with tears and thunder, he appeared at my door, trembling with rain and fear. His father, the wise Adelmar, a man of strong spirit but weary flesh, lay on the verge of dissolution, abandoned by science and by common hopes. "Master," he said to me in a broken voice, "they say you can bring life back. I beg you, don't let my father die." I looked at him with eyes that see beyond matter, and I begged heaven to give me the right words to heal not the body, but the blindness of the heart. "Elian," I replied tenderly, "I am not here to protect bodies from the end, but to awaken souls from oblivion. The legacy you can receive is not in prolonging the heartbeat, but in remembering the melody that vibrates even when the drum no longer sounds." For 7 dawns, we walked together the invisible paths of sacred knowledge. I taught her to see the world as a reflection of her inner self, to understand that every word, when born from pure intention, is a divine decree, that every thought, when held with love, can lift mountains, that every breath, when taken with presence, is an act of creation in itself. But what really changed Elian was understanding that he wasn't supposed to cure his father. His task was to remember, along with him, the truth that dwells beyond the flesh. I sent him back with a mission deeper than medicine. "Go to his bedside," I said, "and say these words. Father, you are not this suffering body. You are the eternal breath that chose this form to grow. I recognize in you the divine spark that has never stopped burning." Elian returned 3 days later. His gaze was different. It didn't carry the exaltation of a physical miracle, but rather the serene wisdom of one who has witnessed the veil lifted. He told me how, in his final moments, his father had smiled with such peace that the entire room was filled with a light that no candle could have lit. Some swore they saw luminous figures surrounding the bed. Others simply wept, without knowing why. "Now I understand, Master," Elian told me in a firm voice, "that what endures is not the body, but the consciousness that inhabits it." I nodded, because that's all that can be offered as a true inheritance. "And now that you, pilgrim of the invisible, have reached these words, I too give you my last treasure. You are not a mortal being yearning for eternity. You are eternity itself playing at being mortal. Every sentence you've read through these pages is a seed planted in the fields of your consciousness. Don't memorize them. Don't treasure them like jewels. Live them. Allow them to blossom when your soul needs them. Every symbol you've learned, every image that sparked in your mind aren't techniques. They're keys, and now they're in your hands. From this moment on, every conscious breath you take will be a return. Every act of love an offering. Every word you speak with intention will be an echo of the sacred word that has always lived within you. The power of healing lies not in transforming bodies, but in remembering that we were never broken. We are not shadows seeking light, but light playing at being shadows. Nor is death what we should fear, for we were life before our first breath, and we will be life after our last. So when the lights go out and silence falls, remember this. Every dawn is an opportunity to resurrect. Every step you take with intention is a silent prayer. And every soul you touch with truth is another star, awakening in the firmament of the world. If anyone stumbles upon this book in the centuries to come, let them not say that they found the words of a forgotten sage, but that they heard the voice of awakened conscience speaking to them from their own depths. Because the eternal legacy is not a manuscript, nor a formula, nor a hidden secret. The true legacy is you. You who remember, you who awaken, you who carry the now lit torch and let it shine, and may every action you take from this day forward be a living flame of the sacred. Chapter 12, The Keeper of the Silent Light. The shadows lengthen in my study, dancing as if every corner of this ancient room wants to say goodbye. The candle flame flickers, not for lack of wax, but because it senses the end of this stage is near. I write these lines not as a farewell, but as one who wraps a sacred jewel in a cloth of silence before handing it over to their heir. I have experienced many deaths, and all of them have led me toward a greater birth. Therefore, this departure does not worry me. It is not a closure, but an expansion. Because when one has walked through the fire of the word and drunk from the fountain where eternal symbols are born, one cannot perish. One only dissolves into totality, like a drop that returns to the ocean. Among my last memories is Eliane's face, that young man with a restless soul and a gaze as moist as the willows at the riverbank. He arrived at my door one stormy night, with the eyes of someone who has searched for a long time without finding solace. He carried not only the weight of water on his clothes, but also the weight of a deeper pain. His father, Adelmar, was dying. "Master," he said in a broken voice, "I have heard that you hold the key that opens the doors to miracles. I beg you, save my father." I could see in him what so many years had taught me to recognize. It was not the illness of the body that needed to be healed, but the invisible wound of the soul that had forgotten its immortality. "I didn't come into the world to avoid goodbyes," I replied, "but to remind hearts that what is eternal is not lost. It only changes form." For 7 dawns we shared the sacred fire of knowledge. It wasn't with formulas or recipes. I spoke to her about the invisible that sustains the visible, about how each word, when spoken with awareness, can move mountains in the soul. I taught her that breath, when inhabited, becomes an act of creation, that love, when held with intention, transforms even the hardest stone. However, the real learning came when he realized that he shouldn't cure his father, but rather accompany him in remembering his light. "Come to him," I said, "and whisper not from your throat, but from your soul. Father, you are more than this suffering flesh. You are an eternal fire that chose this experience to remember its divinity. I recognize in you the spark that never goes out." And so he did. 3 days later he returned, not with the joy of one who has conquered death, but with the peace of one who has walked beside it without fear. He told me how, in his final moments, his father had opened his eyes and smiled like someone finally remembering an ancient, forgotten pact. The room, he said, was filled with a light that didn't come from any lamp. Some swore they saw wings fluttering between the curtains. Others just remained silent. "Now I understand," Eliane told me. "The true legacy is not the prolongation of life, but the awakening of a consciousness that has never slept." I nodded gratefully, because that's all that can be offered as a legacy. Awakening. And now you, who have read these pages like someone gathering breadcrumbs in an ancient forest, have also reached the end of this path. Not to stop, but to light the torch that others, in due time, will take from your hands. Let me then give you my last secret. You are not a body seeking eternity. You are eternity playing at inhabiting a body. Every word you've read here isn't alien knowledge. It's a memory that has returned to you. Every symbol that touched your mind is an echo of something your soul already knew. These pages are not a book. They're a mirror. And now that you've remembered who you are, the responsibility is no small one. From today on, your every breath can be a creation, every glance a blessing, every gesture a seed of healing. The deepest alchemy does not occur in laboratories or grimoires, but in the moment when an awakened consciousness decides to live with radical love. The word is not an ancient word. It's your own voice when it decides to speak the truth. Healing isn't fixing what's broken, but remembering we were never broken. Death isn't an end, but a bend in the road to eternity. And life Life is the art of transforming again and again, without losing oneself. I have left this manuscript not for you to venerate, but for you to transcend. May you live it, rewrite it, and transcend it every day. Because the true grimoire is you. And if one day someone stumbles upon these withered leaves, let them not say they have discovered the teachings of an ancient man, but rather that they have heard the whispers of the spirit that never ages. Let them understand that the word is not something learned, but something remembered. For it is the original voice that dwelt in everyone before the first birth. Now that the candles are burning out and the silence becomes as dense as an embrace, I give you the only thing worth keeping. You are the sacred inheritance. Use your light wisely, because from this moment on, you are the guardian of mysteries, not of other people's secrets, but of your own, the ones that have always been waiting for you in the stillness of your heart. And every time the sun rises, remember this: you have a new opportunity to be reborn, and you have a new word to create, you have a new gesture to love, and you have a new world to heal. You are the legacy, you are the flame. Chapter 13. The Silence of the Phoenix. There are nights when the universe kneels to listen to you, not because your voice is louder than the stars, but because it has been woven from the same light. This is one of those nights. And as the embers slowly die beneath my cauldron, I let the silence speak to me in its sacred language. There are no more disciples at the threshold. The echo of their footsteps lives on in the walls, but their voices now resonate on their own paths. And that's okay. No seed was created to remain in the furrow. It was made to break the earth, grow toward heaven, and offer its fruit to the world. Today I will not write to leave knowledge. Today I will write to light fires, because the time has come when knowing is no longer enough. It is time to remember, not with the mind, but with the soul. And that requires courage. The courage to let go. The courage to die in the known in order to be born in the true. Many seek immortality, believing it means perpetuating the body, but true eternity lies not in avoiding death, but in knowing how to be reborn. Like the phoenix, which isn't afraid of turning to ash, because it trusts in the fire that will raise it up again. Immortality isn't avoiding the end, but embracing it with open arms and an awakened heart. There comes a moment in every walker's life when wisdom stops coming from books and begins to spring from silence. That moment is terrifying, because silence doesn't explain. It doesn't offer answers or formulas, it only points out, and it's up to us to walk. For years I searched through ancient manuscripts for what I could only find in the stillness of my chest. I questioned oracles, followed comets, deciphered symbols, and transcribed treatises. But it was the sound of a tear falling onto the wood of my table that revealed to me the truth no master could give me. The source is within me. And it's in you, in every moment you've loved without guarantee, in every tear you shed without understanding its cause, in every hug given without measure. There, right there, divinity ignited without your knowing it. Not in the extraordinary, but in the profound. In the everyday. Want to know if you're awake? Observe how you treat silence. Whoever flees from it has not yet remembered. Whoever embraces it has begun to hear the voice of the soul. Because the soul doesn't scream, it only whispers. And to hear it, you have to silence the whole world. Once, while meditating in a cave on Mount Azariel, an old woman clothed in wind appeared to me. She didn't walk, she floated. She didn't speak, she looked. And with that gaze, she dismantled all my truths. "Who are you?" I asked, more curious than afraid. "I'm the one who comes when you no longer need words," she replied without moving her lips. Then I understood that there are teachings that only come when there are no more questions. That the greatest wisdom is not knowing, but being. Since that day, every night I surrender to an ancient rite. I say goodbye. I say goodbye to my ideas, my beliefs, my body if necessary. Because I know that if I wish to be reborn the next day, I must die first. There is no resurrection without surrender. There is no new light without shadows that precede it. Today I give you this ritual, dear reader, so that you can make it yours. Before sleeping, close your eyes like someone closing a cycle. Breathe like someone exhaling all burdens. And in the darkness of your eyelids, imagine yourself burning. That every lie, every fear, every mask is burned in a sacred fire. Do not fear. What is real within you cannot be destroyed. Only what is left over will be ash. And then when nothing remains but emptiness, listen, not with your ears but with your chest, because there you will hear the heartbeat of the universe telling you, you are the fire, you are the ash, and you are the flight. That is the alchemy of the soul. To die every night, to be reborn every day with less ego and more essence. We don't need to turn lead into gold. We need to turn forgetting into memory, fear into faith, separation into unity. Humanity doesn't need more wonders, it needs more burning hearts. People who, without knowing how, wake up and say, today I will live from the light. Because living in the light doesn't mean being free of shadows, but rather walking with them without getting lost. It means loving even when it hurts, trusting even when you can't see, moving forward even when you don't understand, and when the day comes for you to depart, because that day will come. Don't be afraid. Just make sure you've lived on fire. May those who mourn you do so out of gratitude, not regret. May your legacy not be a grave, but a flame that others will want to carry. Now, before you close this page, promise me something, that you will not seek the path outside, that you will not worship other people's words without first listening to your own, that you will not wait for heavenly signs while ignoring the whisper of your soul, because you are the message, you are the prophecy, you are the phoenix flame that even in the darkness knows how to fly. And when you forget, because we all forget, come back here, not to reread, but to remember that the teacher you've been searching for lives within you, and that the silence you feared so much is your true home. Chapter 14. The Invisible Testament of Light. There is no greater inheritance than that which cannot be seen. I have spent years surrounded by symbols, formulas, ancient invocations, lost codices, and celestial alchemies. But today, as dawn gently breaks the shadows of my room, I know that everything I wrote was merely the echo of a greater truth that cannot be captured in words. Everything we are, we have already been, and everything we seek already inhabits us. This will be my last chapter, not because knowledge has come to an end, but because there's no longer any need to continue writing what the soul can remember on its own. Words have been the boat. Now it's time to swim. I want to leave you a testament not of possessions but of revelations, an invisible testament written not with ink on paper but with light on your spirit. Take these words not as instructions but as a mirror. First, don't think of awakening as a destination, it's a return. Like when you remember the melody of a forgotten song and by humming it, feel like you always knew it. That's your deepest truth. You don't need to conquer it, just return to it. Second, never underestimate the power of a small act of love. A conscious sigh can alter the very fabric of the universe. A smile offered from the heart can heal centuries of wounds. A silent forgiveness can release entire generations of pain. Third, you are not alone. You never have been. Even if your skin doesn't perceive it, you are surrounded by subtle presences watching over your awakening. They are called angels, guides, or simply deep intuitions. They don't demand prayers, just listening. They don't ask for obedience, only consistency. Every time you choose truth over fear, they applaud in silence. Fourth, love is not a feeling, it's a force. It's the secret structure that holds the cosmos together, the visible and the invisible. Don't love as someone giving something other than yourself. Love as someone who remembers that you are already the love you seek to give. Fifth, the body is a bridge, not a prison. Treat your body as you would a temple housing a sacred flame. Don't judge it by its limits. Honor its language. When it hurts, listen. When it beats strongly, thank it. Every cell in you knows how to pray. Sixth, don't run away from pain. Pain isn't a punishment, it's a sign. It's the soul's hand knocking on the ego's door. It hurts, yes, but it also opens. When you live with awareness, pain becomes a seed. And every seed, even if it dies, blossoms. Seventh, don't lose yourself in the search for miracles. You are the miracle. You have traversed centuries of silence to get here. Your every heartbeat is a cosmic symphony. Every loving thought you utter changes the geometry of the stars. Don't underestimate your own divinity. Eighth, If you ever feel lost, breathe. Just breathe. That simple gesture contains the wisdom of the entire universe. To inhale is to receive. To exhale is to release. In that flow lies the eternal dance of life. Nothing that breathes is truly lost. Ninth, remember that light doesn't fight darkness. It simply enters a period. You don't need to fight your shadows. Just let awareness illuminate them. When you dare to look at what hurts, without judgment, with tenderness, you are cleansing not only your own history, but everyone's history. 10th, and above all, don't wait. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Don't wait for everything to be understood. Don't wait for the world to change. Start today, from where you are, with what you have. Your soul doesn't need conditions to unfold its light. It only needs your permission. I've spoken to you about alchemy, resurrection, sacred fasting, and inner union. But all these paths are merely gateways to the same thing: remembering who you truly are. You are a time traveler who has crossed the ages not to accumulate knowledge, but to awaken love. You are a torch that carries within it the spark of the One. You are the child of infinity, pretending for a time to be finite only to learn to love from within form. One day, when you've forgotten all this, when the responsibilities of the world and the noise of your thoughts try to envelop you again in oblivion, all you have to do is touch your chest and say, "I am here." And that is enough. Because it is. Sometimes enlightenment doesn't come in grand epiphanies. It comes in simple gestures, in reaching out, in closing your eyes and smiling, in embracing your imperfection as part of the whole, in saying thank you without knowing to whom, because that thank you always hits the right note. I've seen kingdoms fall and rise. I've studied with wise men and conversed with spirits. But nothing has taught me as much as sitting in silence, listening to the heartbeat of my soul. Today, I ask you to listen to yours. May you sit, even if only for a few minutes a day, in the presence of yourself. May you observe yourself without masks, without titles, without expectations. Because in that moment, when you stop trying to be something and simply be, you will be remembering the greatest mystery. You are the Word. You are the flame. You are the living testament of light. And even if you don't see me, even if you've never heard my true name, every time you choose love over fear, I'll be with you. Because we are part of the same consciousness, exploring itself through us. Now it's time to close the book, not with a period, but with an invitation. Live like someone who remembers. Love like someone who has never forgotten. Walk like someone who knows that every step is a prayer. And when silence comes, let it speak for you. Before we say goodbye, I want to remind you that in the description you have the first link to continue exploring metaphysics in a much deeper way. Don't settle for just knowing a little more. Invest in yourself, follow your curiosity, and discover everything you are capable of achieving. See you soon.